The wind howled across the jagged cliffs of North Cornwall, carrying with it the scent of salt, seaweed, and something far less natural, fear. It was the morning of August 12, 2007, when 82-year-old Doreen Penhaligon, a local widow known for her early walks and wildflower pressings, spotted what she first thought was a drift of kelp washed up along the shoreline near Pentire Head. But as she drew closer, her breath hitched. It wasn't kelp. It was the body of a young girl. She was lying on her side, partially covered by sand and sea foam, her arms tucked in unnaturally, as though she had curled into herself. Her pale skin was blotched with bruises, and her long dark hair fanned around her like a halo. She wore no shoes, no jacket, just a simple white cotton dress, soaked through and clinging to her small frame. There were no signs of a struggle nearby. No bag, no ID, and most haunting of all, no one had reported her missing. By the time police arrived, Doreen was wrapped in a thermal blanket, shivering more from shock than cold. "I've lived here all my life," she told Detective Inspector Henry Rollins. "I know every family in this town, every child. I've never seen this girl before." The autopsy would confirm what the detective already feared. The girl had died from blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. But the tide had also ravaged her body, making it impossible to know exactly when she died, only that it had happened within the past 48 hours. The media jumped on the story, dubbing her the silent girl of Pentire. Locals began locking their doors at night, and police, with no name, no leads, and no known witnesses, were left grasping at shadows. Detective Rollins stood on the edge of the shore that evening, the same spot where the girl had been found. The ocean hissed against the rocks, endless and indifferent. Behind him, the cliffs loomed dark against the blood-orange sky. He lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "She's someone's daughter," he whispered into the wind, "and someone out there knows why she's dead." He just didn't know yet that this case would follow him for the next 2 decades, and nearly destroy him. At the Truro police station, Detective Inspector Henry Rollins sat at his desk, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Before him were crime scene photos, images that would haunt him for years. The girl's face, peaceful yet bruised. Her feet, bare and blistered. Her delicate hands, one curled into a loose fist as though she'd held something, then let it go. They had nothing. No purse, no cell phone, no tags on her clothes. Her fingerprints weren't in any database. Dental records matched no one on file. Her DNA, meticulously swabbed and sent through Interpol, national, and missing person systems, came back empty. "She's a ghost," one officer muttered. Rollins stared at the photo again. "She's not a ghost. She's someone who was erased." That afternoon, he called in Dr. Eleanor Wren, one of the UK's leading forensic anthropologists. She'd assisted in war crime identifications, missing children cases, and cold cases across Europe. She had a reputation for seeing patterns others missed. After examining the body, Dr. Wren looked troubled. "She's between 14 and 16, she began. "Light malnourishment, evidence of healed fractures on her ribs and forearm, older, maybe 2 or 3 years old. But here's the strange part, her dental work. It's not British. It looks Eastern European, possibly from the Balkans. Human trafficking. That was the first thought that entered Rollins' mind. Over the next few weeks, Interpol released a pan-European appeal. Photos were circulated. Artists rendered a facial reconstruction. The media latched on again, especially tabloids, now speculating wild tales of smuggling rings, cults, and satanic sacrifice. But nothing came back. No family, no friends, no one looking for her. The girl who died on a Cornish beach had, somehow, never existed in the eyes of the world. Meanwhile, public fear in Cornwall reached a fever pitch. Rumors spread like wildfire. Had a killer dumped her there? Was she murdered elsewhere and placed by the shore as a message? On the 30th day after her discovery, she was buried in an unmarked grave in Truro Cemetery. The headstone read, "Jane Doe, found on Pentire Beach, August 12, 2007. May you find in death the name stolen from you in life." Rollins watched from afar as Dr. Wren left a single white rose on the coffin. The case had officially gone cold. but neither of them would let her go, and neither could imagine what was coming next. 10 months passed. Cornwall's winds swept over Pentyre Head as they always had. The girl's unmarked grave, visited only by occasional volunteers and Eleanor Wren, began to fade from public memory. News cycles moved on, but for Detective Rawlins and Dr. Wren, forgetting was not an option. Eleanor kept the case file on her nightstand. One night, unable to sleep, she stared again at the photo from the girl's autopsy. Her eyes fell on a small detail she'd noticed before but never fully questioned: her necklace. It had been a simple silver chain, tucked beneath her shirt, with a faded, delicate pendant. Initial reports marked it as inconclusive. The symbol was too eroded to identify, but something about it lingered in her mind. She scanned the image into her computer and enhanced it, adjusting the lighting and contrast. The shape that emerged gave her chills. A Serbian Orthodox cross, slightly bent at the tip. She immediately reached out to a contact at Europol in Serbia, sending the enhanced photo with a tentative subject line: possible regional identification, pending clue. Within 3 days, she received a reply. An investigative journalist based in Belgrade had seen the photo and recognized the pendant. A similar necklace had appeared in a missing person report filed in 2005. A photo of a teenage girl wearing the exact same necklace, arms wrapped around a younger child in a rural village near the border with Bosnia. The missing girl's name? Anika Petrovic. Age at disappearance, 13. Last seen boarding a van with 2 other girls. Destination: Belgrade. She was never seen again. Rawlins flew out within the week. In Serbia, things moved quickly. With the journalist's help, they tracked down the family. Anika's mother, Katerina, lived alone in a modest flat, her face aged with years of grief. She broke down when she saw the photo. "That's her," she whispered in Serbian. "That's my daughter." DNA confirmed it within days. Jane Doe of Cornwall had a name: Anika Petrovic. The news hit the UK media like a bombshell. Breaking: silent girl on Cornwall beach identified after 10 months. The headlines swept through Europe, reigniting conversations about human trafficking, migrant exploitation, and police oversights. But the question remained: how did Anika get from a village in Serbia to a beach in Cornwall? And why did no one see her in between? That answer would unravel a far darker web than anyone imagined. The confirmation of Anika Petrovic's identity should have brought closure. But for Detective Rawlins, it only raised more questions. Why had Anika been left to die alone in Cornwall? Who brought her there? And why? Interpol opened an official inquiry into cross-border trafficking, and Rawlins returned to the UK with renewed urgency. He re-examined every file, every tip, every overlooked witness. That's when he found it. A name scribbled in a witness statement from a beach patrol officer back in June. There was a tall man in a blue windbreaker. Looked like he didn't belong. Eastern European, maybe. Walked away from the cliffs before I reached him. Said his name was Luca. Luca. The same name had appeared in 3 other statements, all too vague to follow at the time. A street cleaner, a hotel clerk, a woman walking her dog. Each had seen a man named Luca around the Pentyre Head area in the week leading up to Anika's death. It was thin, but it was something. Rawlins pushed Europol for more. The database returned dozens of results. Too many to be useful, until Dr. Wren received another email from Serbia. Attached were 6 grainy photos. They had been taken by a border guard in Hungary in 2009 during a routine stop and search of a van suspected of transporting migrants illegally. The driver had no papers, but was released due to lack of evidence. The man's name? Luka Vasic. Birthplace? Novi Sad, Serbia. Alias? None. Employment? Unknown. He had vanished after that. Rawlins enlarged the photo of Luka and stared at it for a long time. Then he overlaid it with the artist's sketch from the Cornwall Beach witness. Same sharp jawline, same angular brow, same emptiness behind the eyes. "It's him," Rawlins whispered. Luka Vasic wasn't a ghost. He was very real and possibly still in the UK. The police began combing through migrant shelters, abandoned barns, shipping docks. Then they found something chilling. In a storage container outside Truro, police uncovered 3 missing passports, including one belonging to a 14-year-old Ukrainian girl reported missing in London in 2021. A hidden compartment in the floor held burnt clothing, a silver chain, and what appeared to be hair ties, identical to the one found on Annika. But Luka was gone. He was always gone just before they arrived. The pattern was clear. He was still moving victims across Europe, hiding in plain sight, and Cornwall was just one of many stops. And Annika? She might not have been the first. She almost certainly wasn't the last. It was a nondescript email that changed everything. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read only, "You're not the only one looking for him." Detective Rawlins opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sentence. "We met him once, but we didn't get away." Attached was a zip file containing video recordings. Shaky, dark, and hard to watch. Rawlins hit play. The first showed a room with concrete walls and flickering fluorescent lights. 2 young women sat on the floor, their faces bruised and blank. A third girl stood near a metal door, sobbing silently. The file was dated 2017, and the metadata pointed to a location in Birmingham. Another video showed a man's shadow moving across the wall. His voice, in thick accented English, was low and deliberate. "You don't need names here. You don't need to think. Just do as you're told." Rawlins paused the clip. He knew that voice. Even distorted, it matched the profile of Luka Vasic. He reached out to the sender. Hours passed. Then, another message arrived. "I'll talk, but not on record." That night, Rawlins drove to a hidden women's shelter outside Gloucestershire. The woman who met him had a hood pulled tight over her head. Her name was Iskra. She had escaped Luka's operation in 2020, smuggled out by a sympathetic worker who risked his life to help her flee. She said Luka didn't work alone. He was part of a network, well-financed and protected by people in unexpected places, including churches, shipping companies, and even immigration offices. But Luka was the enforcer. He picked the girls, broke them, disposed of them, and according to Iskra, Annika had defied him. She tried to run. She told others to run. She was becoming a problem. Iskra trembled as she said it. He makes examples out of problems. Now, Rawlins had motive. Annika was murdered because she tried to escape, not just for herself, but for others. She was a fighter, a threat. But why leave her in Cornwall? Why stage it as suicide? Iskra had an answer for that, too. Because the English countryside is perfect, quiet, forgettable. Tourists come, tourists go. No one asks questions. Rawlins nodded, though his fists clenched. Annika was meant to disappear. She was meant to be the silent girl, buried under waves and wind and whispers. But she was talking now. Through every clue, every witness, every woman who survived, she was shouting. Detective Rawlins knew time was running out. If Luka Vasic sensed anyone was closing in, he would vanish, just like he had a dozen times before. But now, for the first time, Rawlins had leverage. Iskra's testimony, the videos, and the metadata trail pointing to a shadowy property Luka owned near Sheffield. It was listed under a shell company. Rural, remote, forgotten. The team moved fast. It wasn't just Rawlins anymore. A joint task force with Interpol had quietly joined the operation. They couldn't risk leaks. Too many previous investigations had mysteriously collapsed once Luka's name was whispered. This time it would be different, or so they thought. The night of the raid, rain slammed against the car windows as officers parked half a mile from the property. Drones hovered overhead. Heat sensors showed movement inside. 5 bodies, 1 larger, male. Likely Luka. They went in silent, armed, and prepared. But inside, no Luka. Just 4 terrified women, bound and sedated. They were alive. Barely. One of them was clutching something, a photo. It was Annika. Behind the photo was a handwritten note. "You're too late." Again. Rawlins stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. Then the explosion hit. The side barn, rigged with gasoline and chemicals, erupted in flames. It wasn't meant to kill them, just distract, just escape. Luca had been watching them from the woods the whole time, and now he was gone. That night, Rollins sat at his desk, drenched and broken. He looked again at Annika's photo, her face so young, so alive. She had nearly made it. The others still had a chance. If he didn't stop, maybe some could still be saved. But Luca was still out there, somewhere, watching, listening, moving between borders like smoke slipping through fingers. But now Luca had made a mistake. He had turned Annika into a ghost that would haunt him. And Rollins? He would be her voice. The silence in the courtroom was so thick it pressed against everyone's chest. On the 7th day of trial, a piece of evidence was introduced that hadn't been seen by the public, not even leaked to the press. Detective Marla Hendricks took the stand again, this time holding a sealed plastic evidence bag. Inside was a scorched, dust-covered cell phone. This phone was discovered in the attic crawlspace of the Kessler residence, she explained, turning to the jury. It belonged to one of the missing girls, Haley Porter. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Olivia's mother audibly wept. The defense lawyer immediately objected, but the judge allowed the phone to be entered into evidence. Marla continued, "We recovered partial data from the device. What we found confirms the worst." She gestured to the screen behind her, where still images began to flicker. Blurry and pixelated, but unmistakable. Terrified children, whispering into the camera. One of them, her lips trembling, mouthed, "Please help us. We're under the stairs." He said no one will ever find us. The prosecution paused the video at the frame showing the dim outline of the wooden beams, identifiable as part of the Kessler's home. The room was spinning for Ezekiel, who sat silently in the gallery, fists clenched. That attic had been searched. He remembered the day officers combed the house, crawling with dogs and forensic teams. But somehow they'd missed this phone. Back at home that night, Ezekiel collapsed onto his knees in the dark. He pressed his forehead to the wooden floor, whispering a prayer not for justice, but for forgiveness. He had trusted George. Micah had trusted George. The whole congregation had given blind faith to a man who had, for years, hidden wolves among sheep. And now those sheep were gone, some of them forever. In the end, the Kessler Church trial wasn't just about the guilty. It was about the broken system that enabled them. The children's stories, once buried beneath floorboards and sealed in silence, echoed in the hearts of millions who followed the trial. The nation grieved. The congregation shattered. Micah left the ministry. Ezekiel never returned to the pulpit. But every year, on the anniversary of Haley Porter's disappearance, the church steps are filled with candles, teddy bears, and handwritten notes from strangers. Some say they come to remember the girls. Others come to remind themselves of what happens when blind faith replaces accountability. And still, one question lingers in every corner of that small Tennessee town. How many more voices are still hidden behind walls no one's knocked on yet? Bell-like and subscribe to the channel, because sometimes justice isn't found in the courtroom, but in the stories we choose not to forget.